Welcome to Intimate Conversations, where we support you in healing heartbreak so you can live fully embodied, unapologetically, and deliciously free, being exactly who you are. We are sponsored by Magic Mind, my morning elixir that I swear gives me more focus, expands my joy, and puts an extra spring in my step. So, okay, you luscious creature, it is time to get intimate. Hello, you delicious people. Welcome to another episode of Intimate Conversations. And to me, intimacy is when we can just lower our barriers and we open our heart and we're real and we're vulnerable and we're intimate with the moment, whether that moment requires some bravery to tell the truth, whether that moment is with your romantic partner, whether that is with the divine. And so do we have an incredible man to learn from today. And he's going to be teaching us a lot about, he calls himself the Soul Archaeologist, the amazing Ken W. Stone. That's also his website, Ken W. Stone. And he is a spiritual messenger. He is an author and he's a healer. God expresses through Ken in a very unique way. When people sit with him in transmission, they have a profoundly different experience of the divine in their body. For example, he has worked with a number of advanced former students of Maharishi, who each said, unprompted, following their initial session with Ken, that was the deepest spiritual experience of my life. I'm going to say that again. That was the deepest spiritual experience of my life. And Ken shares his gifts with a spiritually diverse, growing international audience through a variety of virtual and in-person programs and retreats and one-on-one work. And he's going to be sharing with us also a program called Explore Divine Resonance that I want all of us to sign up for. And it is just a blessing to have you on the show. Welcome so much.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So where on the planet even though you're very spiritually connected on this Mother Gaia, where do you live?
I live north of Denver in Colorado in a community called Fort Collins.
Oh, Fort Collins. I totally know where that is. I'm up the road in Wyoming. I'm in Lander, Wyoming. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Not that far.
No, not that far at all. Awesome. We'll have to have coffee when or one of these amazing one-on-one sessions when I head south. Ken, were you born this way? What happened? Give us the lowdown on how you became so connected.
Well, I think we're all born this way, but I wasn't aware of it until after my 37th birthday in 2007. I went to an in-residence meditation retreat, and a fellow participant there, as we were doing the closing meditation, wrote down, "You should be working as a healer." And I was making my living as a mortgage lender at the time, and I had no idea what the word healer meant. So I actually started crying uncontrollably when he wrote that down. It was like this deep recognition that didn't make sense consciously, but still just kind of poured out of me. And when we came out of silence, he said to me, "You're going to discover you've done this in many prior lifetimes, and this is more natural than breathing for you." And what's going on in my mind, even as I was crying more, was, is there a psych ward nearby for you? Or what's going on? Like, what does that mean? Past lifetimes, more natural than breathing. So that was kind of my initial conscious awareness, let's say, of this gift, of this way. I think of it now as not so much my gift, but the manner in which the divine expresses through me.
Yes, I hear you. So there's the uncontrollable crying. Awakening. Okay, I'm apparently for lifetimes this healer. Did you go home to the wife and kids and say, I'm a mortgage lender? Like what happened in your life? Like what does the rest of your life look like?
My life was really kind of falling apart at the time. And so the conversation I had with my wife, the person I was married to at the time, I came home and we were really in the process of separating. And it was a really kind of, there was enough disruption before I learned about this.
Yeah.
And it was far enough outside the field of what made sense rationally. And at the same time, somehow it just resonated with me that I didn't dismiss it. I paid attention to it,
Yeah.
and I guess it was maybe 3 months later, just after Christmas, I hired the same guy to do my first intuitive reading of my life. And I wanted to know, is my life going to work out? Because everything's falling apart. And all he wants to talk about is healing this, healing that. And again, I start crying, listening to him, I guess, speak the truth. I mean, it was
Yeah.
stuff that just didn't make sense on that rational level, but was resonating at such a deep level.
Mm.
And there were kind of three directives that I heard him say. Don't get trained. You know what you're doing. Just go do this.
Nice.
So a couple days later, first of the year, somebody's got a migraine. I say to them, apparently I'm a healer. Can I put my hands on your head? Not knowing what else to offer. I did. My hands and feet start buzzing. The headache goes away, and we're off to the races. But, to your question, it was a really disruptive transition, and it had been disruptive prior, almost like a preparation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't recognize that at all. In fact, it's only in the rearview mirror that was clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, I mean, in some ways the disruption is still going on, because once you open your life to a deeper kind of purpose and divine flow, you're not really in charge anymore. Maybe you think you are, but, and I thought I was still in charge for a while after that, but yeah. So it took me probably 2.5 years of really kind of exploring, is this real? Am I a fraud? Like, what the heck is this? Before I sort of came out of the closet, if I can use that phrase. It was, I was working on people, but they were all, I mean, nothing's really random, but they appeared to be random happenstance kind of things. But I mean, like, I started a Twitter feed and I didn't tell anyone who I was. Who goes on Twitter and doesn't announce their identity? And I had a website where I hid my identity as well, because I was scared. I didn't want people to know who I was. It didn't fit with what I thought I was, or the life I thought I was meant to live. And it seemed to be kind of a socially bizarre thing, to just do healing, or, like, what is that? So I really, although I was working on people pretty quickly around the world, it was more like word of mouth. And it wasn't because I was asking for referrals. People just told their friends. And yeah.
Wow. So, so thank you. So you were in the closet for a couple of years. You completed your relationship. Did she just think you were even more wacko? Or was it?
I love the implication of the question. Well, it's a fair insight. It's a fair insight.
When we let go of one life trajectory, that's a vibration, that's a resonance, that's a belief system. It's all. Because also, when we're surrendered to our purpose, and you are literally the facilitator of this incredible energy, maybe it allowed for a beautiful conscious uncoupling. I don't know, like what?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a messy process, because although I had never looked at another woman in my life, actually my then wife, Laura, and I met another woman, and her name is Amy. And the minute I met Amy, we actually met her together, as I say. We were at, I don't know, a Girl Scout like fundraising event or something, and a realtor that I had done some loans for and knew said, "Hey, I've been meaning to introduce you to one of my mentees, and and here she is." And it was like, when she introduced her, it was like the earth kind of shifted or something, like something really strange was unfolding. And that was before the meditation, before the "you should be working as a healer."
Okay.
So, and that was a really hard thing for me, because, as I say, I mean, in the mortgage lending business at the time, I mean, if you back up a few years before that, things were kind of going nuts. And like the company I worked for, they would do these annual things out in Las Vegas. And I mean, I don't know, I must be one of the most boring men on the planet. I never looked at another woman, like the regional manager, she'd say, "Let's go to a strip club and have a regional meeting." And I'd be like, "No, thanks." It just didn't interest me, And here I am falling in love with this other woman who's married. We're both married to other people. So, I mean, conscious on one level and totally unconscious on another level. And
Yeah.
so, from a relational standpoint, I think that was really hard on sort of all four people involved in this transition. And also Laura and I it was almost like we surfaced to a level of being able to, or I surfaced to a level, maybe she was capable of it the whole time, but I surfaced to a level where I was able to just be very honest and present.
Nice.
And I hadn't been prior to that.
Thank
I
you.
had been kind of hiding and just not being very straightforward about how I was feeling or the ways that I was engaging or not engaging in the relationship, not showing up. We had 2 young daughters. I don't think I was a very present father. I don't think I was just a very happy person. I was really kind of struggling and looking outside myself for meaning and significance in my life. And so great questions, So, I mean, there was an enormous amount of growth going on relationally and spiritually. And what's the difference between those anyway? But I mean, those things were all wrapped up together in a pretty, messy way.
Wow. And so it sounds like you uncoupled with Laura and Amy uncoupled with her partner, and the two of you came together. So that quite turbulent, or pissed a bunch of people off? And
it was a turbulent process. I mean,
so great. You're like the spiritual healer, but you got the total human life.
I mean, I'm telling you, I can remember I would get in these interviews and people would be like, oh, what's it like to be fully enlightened in the perfect life? And I'm like, look, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, this incredible gift flows through. It's an amazing insight and awareness. Yeah. And I mean, I got as much noise as the next person in my life. I'm working through the same stuff. There's like this real, I guess, I mean, maybe everyone can kind of identify this contrast between, it's a really kind of a hard contrast to process or understand. On the one hand, we can have these really incredible, deep spiritual experiences. And on the other hand, it sort of feels like we're smashing our forehead against a brick wall on whatever level of life. And how do those things coexist? And not just in the same lifetime, but in the same millisecond. It's like these things are just banging into each other all the time. And I mean, it makes more sense to me now, but I mean, I just think of it as we're just integrating the separate self. We all have this sense, there's this aspect that I think of it as like, there's the separate self and the whole self. And I mean, really the separate self is just the whole self. It's just masquerading as an aspect that is, well, it's not masquerading, it's just not integrated, right? And it's an illusory dynamic, because the truth is we're all fully integrated, fully enlightened, fully embodied, all these things. But we don't have that experience because of this incredible gift we think of as the illusion of separation. So, now I look at it and I think, when these things show up in life, or, whatever gets animated, my separate self gets animated, I think, oh, goody, here comes another gift. Like, seriously, oh, goody. Here's another gift of my whole self showing up to integrate. But I mean, at the time I was like, what, how can I stop this craziness? Like, it's like I'm traveling down it was a little bit like lifting open a manhole cover or something and traveling into this deep, dark other dimension. And in that dimension, everything was like just deeply, profoundly resonant. And I would sit with people and just these absolute miracles would unfold for them. And then at the end of the session, I'd go back through the deep, dark tunnel out of the manhole, and I'd be back in my regular life. And I think, how do these two things fit together? So.
I'm so glad I'm asking this, though. I've always been attracted to Saint Teresa of Avila. And I don't know a lot, but my understanding is that when I was in Rome, I had to go see the statue when she was in ecstasy with the divine. And my understanding is, so she has this connection, and she would, quote unquote, come back to the people and serve humanity. And if I could encapsulate, my purpose is to have like the delicious embodiment of God consciousness. Like, I want to have the embodiment of ascension. I want to be able to be a hot mess on the
Right.
planet and be
Right.
real and be vulnerable
Right.
and have this energy exude through me and
Yeah.
make the biggest contribution I can. The blending of it all. That's what turns me on around intimacy and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful because I've got like a criminal jury trial of assault from the last boyfriend coming up.
Oh my goodness.
Great, I got that. And then in the past, I had like a 12-year custody battle.
Oh yeah.
And so I often wrestle with, and who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And I do have, not to the way you do it, but I have a capacity to make people feel really, really safe.
Yeah.
And whatever these separate selves show up, and I don't judge.
Yeah.
And I help them to integrate them into
beautiful.
wholeness. And I love it. I
It's
absolutely
profound.
love it. And the story of the life, it's well, who are you? You're not even married. You can't even have, right? And that's how these relationships have helped me bring home my unintegrated separate selves. So they're all gifts.
Absolutely. All gifts.
And
there goes the separate self with that judging noise, who am I to, or how is it possible that I'm able to show up and, support people in their integration when I'm still so wrapped up in my own integration. I love the idea of walking with. That really resonates for me. It's nice. In terms of the developmental kind of journey in consciousness, at least the way I perceive it, there are sort of 4 primary stages of consciousness. Really, there's a 5th, but it's where we're born and, early in our lives, we leave it. So probably nobody listening is in stage 0. And I know I'm not. I'm guessing you're not either. So let's set that aside. But there's, that disempowered and unintegrated dynamic. Yeah. Other people have the power and so on. We all have experiences of that. And then there's an empowered and unintegrated perspective where we think, hey, I'm in charge of everything. I'm making this go. This is all me. Right. And then there's an experience of wholeness and unintegrated, stage 3. And the transition between 2 and 3, that's where surrender comes in. Nice. And in that transition is this really beautiful opening to something that's so much bigger than us, but that's expressing through each of us uniquely. Nice. And that's that journey of integration that you do such beautiful work around. And the paradox between the two is, how do I, out of something I'm not controlling, how do I sit in this space of profound support for others to do this, even as I'm engaged in that process? Yes, well, the stage 2 leader is one who says, I'm perfect, and projects the image of perfection. And that resonates deeply with stage 2 people because they're looking for perfection. The stage 3 leader says, I'm not perfect. None of us are. We're walking together. And, or at least that's how I perceive it. And let us walk together. The divine expresses through me in some unique way, as it does through you and you and you and you. And together we are expressing as the wholeness of divine creation.
I love that.
That's how I see it.
I really love that. And then that was 3. Did you say there were 4? What's 4?
Yeah, the 4th, of course, is union consciousness. And there's the integrated experience of the prior 3. And what's fascinating is 1 and 3 are lookalike stages. So disempowerment and surrender look very similar on the surface, right? And 2 and 4 look similar on the surface too. So there are a lot of people can run around and say, hey, I'm enlightened, I'm fully integrated, it's all perfect. But they're in that projection. They're in that stage 2 dynamic. I'm in charge, you're in charge, we're making this. Versus I'm opening up. I subordinate myself to the divine. I open up to that expression that's coming through everyone and everything all the time. And that's what I'm experiencing. And it's not really a mind game, as you know. It's a being experience. It is the result, in my estimation, of the embodied soul, of that divine essence embodied and expressed viscerally and otherwise through every aspect of our being. And so in that movement, it's really messy. Integration is a messy experience, as we're all experiencing. But if we can be honest and vulnerable about that, to your sort of key focus areas, or at least some of them, then, it's like it gives us all permission to go, oh, we're all doing this together. Nobody is perfect. I'm sitting here working through my stuff. I've got some noise. There's this integration process. I can explore it. And rather than looking for the perfect person who has everything idealized, which is not real.
Yeah.
I'm able to, work with people or walk with people who are acknowledging I am on a human profound journey of opening to my wholeness, and let's walk together. Let's explore that together.
Oh, I love this. I love this. So did I remember right? You said 2007 is when you were crying uncontrollably. Okay. So we're now in 2022, recording of this.
Yeah.
So it was a turbulent, wobbly shift, but now you're with Amy, and your two girls are how old, and what's your life look like now? And you're not doing mortgages anymore. And
I'm not doing mortgages. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I stopped doing mortgages at the end of 2010.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of 2011, I thought everything's all lined up. I'm going to make my living doing this spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite crickets, but it was almost crickets.
Okay.
And I had a little temper tantrum, or a big temper tantrum, and started screaming at God, what's going on?
Yeah.
And that led to my surrender. And I was such a type A personality that I actually scheduled my surrender. So 10 days before, on the 20th of June, 2011, I said, on the 30th, next Thursday, I'm going to surrender on that day.
You're adorable.
True story. So I'm not saying true story to adorable. I'm saying true story to control. And so in that surrender experience, one of the things that resulted from that was an experience of unconditional love for the first time in my life.
Of self?
Yes. Of divine love originating from within me, whose sole attention and focus was me. And that's actually what drove me to surrender. I early in that year, I thought, I've got two issues. I've got a money issue and I've got a love issue. And I did some Enneagram work and learned about the Enneagram, learned my Enneagram point, saw a pattern. Those are always fun to recognize. And I realized, this isn't two things. This is one. This is all about love. Like, I was seeing money as love. That's what it meant to me. And so I realized I've got a love thing going on here, and I don't know how to experience unconditional love. And I've tried everything. Wow. I mean, accomplished type A personality. I've done a lot of work trying to make that happen. And so I surrendered and had an experience of unconditional love. Yeah. Wow. And if we fast forward, you're asking sort of for the snapshot, the update, it's been really interesting, because like, if we'd had this conversation 18 months ago and you'd said to me, and so let's see, 18 months ago, my daughters were 19 and she's 17 now, so 16. Let's just say 19 and 16. They're 3 years apart. I'm not sure that's literally the case based on the month, but let's just pretend that's true. So I've got a 19 and a 16-year-old at that time. And if you'd said to me, Ken, do you understand and do you practice unconditional love? I would have said, absolutely, Alana. I am integrated. I am embodied in this. This is amazing. Yeah. And my oldest daughter was having some pretty serious mental health issues. And Laura and I, my ex-wife and I, took her to a residential treatment center on the 1st of August last summer in 2021. And that was the last time I saw her. She called me up the day before my birthday, the 12th of August that year, and said, happy birthday, acted like everything was fine. And about 12 or 13 days later, Laura called me up and she said, Emma has decided to cut off all contact with you. And she has revoked her, whatever it is that they sign that gives the doctors permission to talk to a parent. And she's revoked all that. And that was it. That was the end of contact. And that was a really challenging experience for me. And it has been teaching me, I don't want to say it's taught me, because I still think I'm learning a lot here. Yeah. But it has taught me an enormous amount about unconditional love. And the realization that unconditional love, even though this is sort of obvious, is not predicated on any particular condition or circumstance.
Yes.
So, for example, with Emma, I am learning to love her unconditionally without a conventional relationship.
Correct.
without any contact. And that is just been an incredible journey. It's been challenging. It's been beautiful, all those things.
Yeah.
And Riley today, she's 17 and in her senior year of high school. And she lives with me half the time and with her mother half the time. And we've got a great relationship. So, yeah, it's interesting. You know, you think you have stuff figured out, and then the petals of the flower open more, and there are more gifts to receive.
Wow.
And yeah, and more integration.
Yeah. It's amazing what we have in common there. I guess it's been about right when COVID hit, I'd been in the custody battle since our son was 1. And when he was about 13, 14, he had decided he wanted to live with dad, that's how he was going to create peace, because then dad would win. And he was right. The court battle ended. And I agreed that he could blame me, make me look bad, whatever, but we would still meet secretly. We'd go for hamburgers and facials. And and I would acknowledge his choice, his path, and take the high road. And that lasted for a couple of years till he was about 17. And then COVID hit. And I remember it was like hamburgers and facials, right? So it was time for his facial. I was out of town. And I said, oh, the world is shutting down. If you can't make your facial, please call, because I don't want you to have a no-show. And he didn't call. And then I called to say, hey, you need to call and clean that up. That was it. It's been 2.5 years and I haven't heard from him.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that about you. Wow.
I hear you. Yeah. So I know the different situations, but similar threads.
Yeah.
How do we keep our heart open in unconditional love to our baby, our child, in the face of that behavior, and open to ourselves, not to shame or blame ourselves.
Oh my God, that's a big thing, isn't it?
Right.
Oh,
and I busied myself, to be really honest with you, Ken.
Yeah.
I started a partnering app. I have my coaching business. I'm developing a reality show. Like, I'm just going to go, well, okay, I'm just going to serve. That's what I'm going to do. But this past Mother's Day, so it had been the second Mother's Day without him. And I did my morning ritual of texting all the moms I know and happy Mother's Day, and truly doing my best to wish them authentic well. And then I did what I'd never done before. I'm pretty good about feeling my feelings. But this one I hadn't felt fully, like the ugly cry. And I'm living in this little 1-bedroom place with lots of horses and land, and I'm safe and all is well. And I went into the closet, and there's a mirror, and I put my suitcase and a candle, and I brought a little chair in and tissues, and I brought a whole bottle of Prosecco. And I sat there and I looked myself in the eyes. That's the one thing I hadn't done, Ken. I had a good attitude. I'd forgiven. I'd done the integration work. You know, I'd done all these steps, but I hadn't really looked in my eyes of how lonely and sad.
Yeah.
And I just sobbed and sobbed, and let myself reconnect with myself. Like, you're being brave. You're doing the work. I don't know when he'll return. I sense he will. And can I keep my heart open even today? So I totally hear you. Wow. So blessings to our children.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, because they are gifts teaching us a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, more than, I mean, it's just a constant opening and revealing it's like those different facets or those different aspects of intimate relationships. You know, there's a certain kind of intimacy with a child.
Yes.
And it's like the child is a surrogate for the divine relationship in certain aspects, just like a romantic partner is sort of a surrogate, or a place in which we work out some of that stuff. And, you know, and then there's parents and siblings and on and on and on, friends. I mean, there's just all these different aspects of, you know, opportunities to sort of animate those things that are as yet unintegrated, and then come to them with grace and presence, and then open to receive the gift of whatever there is behind what's being animated.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easy to recognize, and sometimes it's, I mean, at least in my experience, I'm never conscious of what's integrating in some areas. I can tell things are integrating, but I don't know what's integrating. I don't know what the lesson is consciously, but I can feel it energetically. I can even feel it physically, like viscerally in my body.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it is really a profound and beautiful process, but also it can be confusing and frustrating and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Tell us a little more about the feelings in the body. I'm doing, after that last relationship, is the first time I'd ever experienced physical abuse in a relationship. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was very clear that the only one in common with my 2 marriages and then that last relationship was me. And I'm creating this on some level. What's going on? And I've done a tremendous amount of, it's called psychedelic somatic integration. And just it's full surrender to the body, to recapitulate that original wound, trauma, so that I can get out of that level 4 trauma hypervigilance where my body, the unconscious, keeps attracting the abuser or the batterer. And I can get home. And it's been, I used to be a dancer. So, and I love embodiment work, but this is a whole other level of surrender to the wisdom and consciousness of the body. So I'm very curious with your capacities, your gifts as a healer, we, the infinite being, and the body, and the embodiment. So tell us more about what you've discovered personally and in your work regarding the consciousness of the body.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you articulate it that way. And it sounds like a very interesting process that you're working through or have been working through. One of the ways, or I guess the way that I articulate it with language is I think of it as soul embodiment.
Okay.
So I guess this is sort of how it's been for me because I really haven't trained. It's more like divine training, guidance, and then looking at patterns with people. So in the summer of 2010, I realized, okay, I'm going to see if I can really explore this, but I didn't really have any words at that point. It was just things were happening. I wasn't teaching anything exactly. And people had lots of questions, but I had no answers. So internally I was saying, all right, God, it's time, how about some downloads? Like, can you give me something here? I mean, it'd be great to be able to answer some questions or explain something or, just help me out, like throw me a bone or even more, give me something here. And so in September, I had this huge download when I was working with a client and, it didn't even relate to the session with the client. It just came in, boom. And I, maybe you've had these experiences. You see all this stuff, you feel it, there's just incredible depth there. I literally said out loud, that's it. Like, it was so simple. I was like, what? My client's like, what are you talking about? I'm sorry. Someone else coming in. So, I had been asking, can you give me a process for, like, I think of them now as like the big 5. To me, they're like the placeholder sort of consciousness amplifiers that most people sort of focus on, or, it's not everyone focused on it. We tend to have maybe 1 or 2 of these. It's a money thing. It's a relationship thing. It's a health thing, et cetera, et cetera. Right? It's a God thing or whatever. So, so I was like, okay, God, can I have a process for this and this and this and this, right? And what I got was a single process and really of sort of understanding how all this stuff fits together. And I was just like, I'm sort of a literalist. So what I saw was like a layer of sand, and above the sand is sort of the life we're all living, and beneath the sand is the divine expression, undistorted, flowing into the individual. There's no difference between the divine light and the divine field and the divine light as you, as me, etc. And I started realizing those grains of sand are just the illusion of separation, and they're casting these shadows up into so you kind of get it. So that was like the beneath the sand download. So then instantly I think I'm going to go explore this, right? I'm going to go check this out with people. So, somebody comes into my practice, I don't know, a few days later, I'm like, hey, I want to check out this thing. Let's see what happens. And so what started happening was just profound healing. People would have this visceral experience of their wholeness, and then it would stick. Like, I've worked with a veteran who had complex PTSD. He was messed up on every level of his being. We did 3 sessions. That was it. Like everything was fixed. And so then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to teach this to a group of people because we got to like, it's time to share this thing. Let's see what happens. And so I taught it, turned it into a self-study class. And then I would get these feedback, these emails from people, and they'd be like, hey, I took Beneath the Sand. It was awesome initially and for the first couple of weeks. And now it's not really working anymore. And at the time I had lots of time and I'd be like, okay, well, let's just get on the phone or on Skype or whatever. Let me just connect in energetically and see what's going on. And I started noticing when I would connect in with people, like their energy center of gravity was like up in their head. And I was like, no, that's not really where that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be down in the hips. And I started realizing when I work with people, like that soul embodiment piece where the soul comes home into the hips, when it comes home into the body, that's just happening anyway. But I wasn't really consciously aware of it until then. And so then I started teaching it and working with it. And I recognized that there's like this really profound level of, I guess you could think of it like divine alchemy, like in the embodied presence of the divine, the embodied soul, there is this profound presence or fire, if you want to think of it that way, that's really, really hot when you're embodied all the way into your hips. It will consume anything. And if you allow yourself to feel whatever's coming up that gets animated, it gets transmuted. And the key is you have to feel it without becoming identified with it, which can be kind of challenging, little fine line there, right? But if you do that, then this magic happens. I mean, like all the trauma goes away, boop, you remember the thing, but there's no charge to it. You move on, right? And for some people, they're stuck in these trauma cycles that are echoing in this lifetime, but maybe the origin goes back, who knows how many lifetimes, right? And so I was seeing this level of trauma being transmuted. And I mean, it's just, so when I think of this process of kind of soul embodiment, I see it as both a process for transmuting noise, not clearing it. And I don't really think we're transcending above it either. I think of it almost like we're descending down to the inner wholeness. I think that's why my friend named me the Soul Archaeologist. It's like we're excavating down to something that's already there. Exactly. And as we move down, we shift from like these trauma cycles into these cycles of resonance. And we just open up into this really profound kind of dynamic. I don't like the language around a different dimension just because it seems to convey like something special and unique, and it doesn't seem special or unique to me. I mean, I've sat with people from all different backgrounds, different stations in life, and so on. Everyone gets there. It's just like, let's just go do this. Boom, boom, boom. We're doing it. It's working. This is beautiful. So in that space, there's this whole different dynamic that opens up. It's like life is before focused on how do I address and overcome the challenges to now, how do I honor this flow and how can I stay in a state of alignment within that, within myself, and honor that expression in every aspect of my life.
I love this. I've done 3 of my 4 series. And
Beautiful.
what I'm discovering is like, I have a basement. I'm like, oh, I have a basement. So this is the descending thing you're talking about. I never get there. It just kept hypervigilantly spinning. All And the little baby brain was trying to do something different. I had the best of intentions, but I couldn't, the body was not going to come on for the ride because it was stuck in this loop of hypervigilance, recreating. And I'm pretty clear it's been lifetimes because some of the things that have come up are memories, and other ones I'm like, I don't remember that, but this body sure as hell does.
Like a cellular memory. So you asked about the consciousness of the body. And I mean, to me, it's like we think of the body as something distinct and separate, but in truth, the body, the soul, the mind, the spirit, however you want to think of these things, they're all one. And so as we're integrating, as we embody, and I sort of think of this as a conscious embodiment practice or soul embodiment practice, as that embodiment process unfolds, then all the wisdom of the totality begins to express, and the resources of our whole selves or divine expression as you, all of those come to bear. Whereas if we're stuck in a thinking dynamic in our heads, that's embodiment in the head. Embodiment in the head and the heart tends to be more of a control dynamic, a stage 2 consciousness. And it's more of a kind of a thinking feeling dynamic. But if we can drop into the hips, we're in a being dynamic. And the mind and the heart are subordinated to the hips. And in that being expression, there is just, it's not just wisdom. There are just extraordinary resources that are expressing. And so I've come to realize that actually things like healing are just sort of byproducts of this dynamic. It's not really the point of it. It's just the after effect of coming into an embodied state, if that makes sense.
Totally. No, I'm tracking you, Ken.
This is a
delicious conversation. So I've always been drawn to, and I always put the word delicious embodiment. God consciousness, and very much the hips, raised a dancer, all the rest of it. I'm very drawn to sacred sexuality, but I haven't experienced what I know is possible. And I'm drawn to integrate the shame around our sexuality so that we can feel this energy in our hips that is like this limitless resources. And like when I think about when I'm really in my zone, it's like my hips are walking me around. It's not my head. My heart is open. Truth, wisdom is there, but the hips are very much guiding the way.
For
and there's a way that I can walk that's like I'm connected to the earth, and I'm buoyant, and I'm confident for no reason, and I'm feeling super sexy, even if I just heard it or whatever. Whatever. I'm so free. And I know it's my purpose, but also I know that I'm here to teach what I'm here to learn. So I'm still very much on the journey and learning, but I love this, the hips, the beingness, the resources, the conscious embodiment. And so this is what you help people do. And this integrates these traumas that they haven't been able to get through.
Exactly. I mean, I've done videos before where I've said, look, if I could only teach you one thing, I would teach you soul embodiment. If I couldn't teach you anything else, if we couldn't do anything else. I mean, there are 6 practices that I've received in Stewart, and one of them Beneath the Sand. And that's a really extraordinary experience. The visceral experience of wholeness, it's outrageous, but you can't get there if you're not embodied. Like soul embodiment is the first step. And so, and I've done, I'll do free events and people come on the line. I'm facilitating individually in the context of the group. People are saying, okay, here's what's going on in my world. I want you to tune in. What do you see? I mean, the answer always is your soul is disembodied. And here's the process for embodying it. Like, this is the practice. Here it is. Here's the experience. This is all it is. Like, it's very simple. And this is going to change your life.
Beautiful. Did you say disembodied? Is that the same as like disassociation? Is that kind of like a similar thing when we're not here? We're out of
exactly. Like I see it as sort of levels of disembodiment, right? So you could be disembodied up to the heart. And I mean, there are incredible resources in the heart, but I mean, I used to kind of struggle. How am I going to convey the value of embodiment? And all of a sudden one day, a couple of years ago, in comes this picture of a sailboat. I was like, oh, thank you, God. That makes sense. So I think of the mind as like the mast and the sail.
Nice.
It's really important, but on its own, it doesn't get you anywhere. You put a mast and sails out at sea, just falls over, can't do anything, right? The heart is the hull of the boat, right? Looks like the whole thing. You plant the mast in the heart. Again, it looks like the boat. Now we've got a beautiful boat, stick it out to sea. But there's a challenge, winds of opportunity or challenge blow, and that thing tips over because the keel hasn't dropped down.
Totally.
So, but the keel isn't visible. I mean, you look at a boat, you don't know how big's the keel, how low in the water is. You have no clue, right? And soul embodiment's the same way. So now you drop into your hips. The keel has dropped. The boat goes out to sea. Winds of opportunity, winds of challenge blow. That thing does miraculous stuff. You look at that boat and you're like, how is that even working?
Right.
Like, this is an absolute miracle. What is it? And it's easy to say, well, how were the sails made? And, mind work, very, very important, essential developmentally. But in a totally embodied state, the mind is subordinate to the heart. The heart is subordinate to the hips. The being state. When you talk about my hips are walking me around, I mean, seriously, tears are coming up for me. It's so beautiful what you're talking about. This is an incredible insight. Seriously, it's a big deal. Being able to come from that being perspective That is maybe one of the most profound gifts that we can give ourselves and others. It's that in that space, check this. You're present, right? When you're in your hips, you are able to be present for yourself and anyone else, no matter what they're going through. But if you're not in your hips, you're not present to yourself and you can't be present to others.
Correct. Oh my God. I'm having my tears now because very few people see that or can articulate about that. They'll say things like, oh my God, it's your energy. What is it about Alana that you are drawn to? Her energy. But that's what it is. Right. And given all that had gone down trauma-wise, it wasn't really fun to be in my hips.
Right.
All the abuse or the drug, the misuse or any of that. So it's taking a lot of work and forgiveness and the rest of it to live in there. But my God, this embodied, and it is delicious. And anything's delicious. The pain is delicious. The pleasure is delicious. Like there's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just life. And I can be with others with things that they can't be with yet. And I don't know, just like you have this gift, I have this gift where I judge myself a fair amount, but I try not to, but I don't do this with others. I just, when I'm there, there's no judgment and I love everything about them. And so they do. And it's, wow. Thanks for seeing me and getting me.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for allowing yourself to be seen. I mean, what a gift, truly. It's really beautiful.
Well, I think I made a new friend today. This is really quite exciting.
And I feel the same way.
You're just a 6-hour drive or a 7-hour drive or whatever.
It's nothing. I mean, in the West, this is like, we're going to go to the store. It's 6 or 7 hours. It's no big deal. Come on.
In LA right there. Okay. So I want everyone to go to kenwstone.com/Alana Banana. No, just kidding. Alana Pratt /Alana Pratt, because you are so generous, sir. Explore Divine Resonance, a 17-week program, complimentary. Like we all need to go here and take this. So tell us what it is. We're all going to join you.
Well, I'd love that. It's so one of the things that I kind of became aware of at the beginning was the stuff that once I had language, the stuff that I was saying, just there's a credibility gap. It's like, how can I actually have an experience like what you're talking about, Ken? I mean, and so I realized the way to bridge that gap isn't to talk more, it's to share the experience with others. And so over the years, I've had various kind of free programs, here's a session, download this or that. And then at the beginning of last year, I sort of had this download, these two programs that I wanted to teach. And the first one, this Exploring Divine Resonance program, I wanted to offer it for free. And I wanted to teach it from a place of total presence. So often what I'll do when I teach is I'll get guidance. Here's what I'm going to teach. And then I'll sort of receive a download and, it sort of shows up like I'm sketching it out and I can see the arc of the program and it makes sense. And I know where I'm headed and all of that, right? And I can see it fits like this is an intro thing, and then we've got this going on and blah, 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 right? It's all intuitive, but I receive it first. And then I can say, here's how many weeks, here's what we're doing. When I started teaching Exploring Divine Resonance, I said, look, I'm just going to show up and be present to the circle. And we'll just see what shows up beyond that. And so that's what this program became. I had no idea it would be 17 weeks long. It was just an exploration that kept unfolding. And I wanted it to be, and I think it is, a accessible and comprehensive and robust resource for lots of different reasons. One of which is like, it's wonderful to get a little taste of something, but when we're working at this kind of depth, there's an opportunity for true sustaining transformation, like a completely different experience. And although there are many layers to that, I really wanted to offer something that was complete. So I just stayed with it until it felt complete. And this is what the result was. So, it's a nice introduction, I guess, into my teaching style and my approach and so on. But let's say even more important, way more important than that, is a transmission in every class. So, and the transmissions are mostly in silence. And maybe there's a little bit of guidance at the beginning, and then it's really just this opening in at a much deeper level where I mean, if I want to try to say it conventionally, it's like I'm working with the group energetically, but I don't really feel like I'm doing any work. It's more like I'm witnessing God go to work with everyone in the group.
Oh, wow.
And so as I was teaching it, when I teach, I don't have an experience of time and space. I have an experience of now. So for me, when I was teaching, everyone who will ever participate was in the field of the experience.
Yes.
So when people go through the program now, and they think it's not in real time, and then they go into the class and into the session and have a totally different experience that feels like it's now, they discover otherwise. So if you think about this as like, this is a great introduction to the work that God does through me. It's a complete experience. And, if people want to go deeper, of course, there are opportunities to do that. But, it's also not a little nibble. It's a wonderful sort of complete entree into that experience. And I would love to share that, with whomever feels resonant with engaging in the experience.
Oh, this is beautiful. So again, kenwstone.com/Alana Pratt to have your Explore Divine Resonance, the 17 weeks of his presence and transmissions. You're teaching me so much, Ken. I do group calls every week with, there's 3 different groups I'm working with right now. And I try to, I always put a song on at the beginning because we got to dance, got to get into our hips, right? Of course.
Yeah.
And then whatever's happening in my life, or I've found that week, I spin it into a question and I invite that. But if something else is going on, they want to talk about something else, that's fine. But what I really do, I do that to sort of shut their minds up and shut my mind up. Right. Really, the weeks that I'm just like, I'm not drawn to a question. I'm drawn to ask you this. And my hips are asking now that I understand from what we're talking about today, like, what is real and true for you right now? And it isn't just being present. And that's all I need to do. But that doesn't, like, why can I charge people for just going, hi? So I feel like I've got to do something, got to do some sort of song and dance. But really, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest privilege to be present with another that's willing to be brave and vulnerable. It's exquisite.
It is.
Yeah. So we're brothers and sisters from another mother.
Giddy up. I'm 100% with you. I love the work you're doing. I love the time we've shared together. I think this has been such an extraordinary conversation, and I really appreciate deeply the work you're doing, the space you hold, and the way you're approaching your work. It's beautiful, really deeply beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And absolutely likewise. So from your incredible soul embodiment to the viewers and the listeners, as we complete, just one more time, kenwstone.com/Alana Pratt, spiritual messenger, author, and healer. You can learn more about him and all of his programs there. He's on Facebook, he's on Twitter, he's on YouTube. So find out more about him. But in completion, how would you like to leave this conversation?
Well, I realize it runs counter to the idea of a conversation, but I can feel myself sinking into the silence, into the emptiness within, into the void, into total presence, into the divine, not just within me, not just within us, you and I, but within your entire community. And what an honor and privilege it is to sit in this space with you and your community. Truly, thank you. I'm so grateful.
I can feel your sincerity and the energy. And I know that you love them as much as I do. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. When I shoot this little video out on YouTube, I'm like you were saying in your program, your 17-week program, they were there when you recorded it before. And when I press go, I'm not looking into the little camera. I'm looking into someone's eyes, someone's soul.
Indeed.
And I feel them, even if it's future, past, like it's all the same. So yeah, I get it. You rock. So
back at you.
We invite you as you complete this, watching us or listening to us. I'm sure so many of the things that Ken shared woke something up inside of you. So please just take 5 minutes before when this is over, and journal, go for a walk, meditate, feel, and certainly take action so that you're going to be in Ken's world with his course. It's complimentary, for goodness sakes, to have complete all these transmissions. But allow something to make a new choice, open a new window, head in a new direction, so that the trajectory, kind of like we talked about the ship, with the mind as the sail and the boat as the heart and the keel as the hips and the beingness, as we're heading just one little direction with that boat, you're going to end up in a different friggin' country over time. So allow this to up-level the trajectory of your beautiful life. And thank you all so much for the honor and privilege of being with you today. This intimacy is really about having our own back and allowing the divine to have our own back. And for this hour, allowing Ken and I to have your back as well. We love you. And until next time, all my love. Thank you for joining us for another edgy, transparent episode. I want you to be able to do more, stress less, feel happier, like I have with Magic Mind. So for Intimate Conversations listeners, you can get 40% off with my code INTIMATE20 when you go to magicmind.co/intimate. You're going to feel amazing, I promise. Thank you for being who you are. I love the shit out of you. Until next time, I've got your back.